Right, so we have studied how we reach the equilibrium and what that means, right? So essentially, I impose three questions. What does this E means, right? And so why we care about this point E? And then so finally, so what force brought us to point E, right? So I was trying to explain to you so how we picture a clock, and just imagine we sit in this floor, trading floor for flour. So that's how we understand that. Okay. So, but in reality, so you're going to see something kind of strange happen, or it's kind of against what we just discussed happen. Okay. This is what we call the tourist trap. I may just probably just give you a picture and tell you a story and help you understand what's going on. So this is a picture I took a few years ago when I traveled to Edinburgh, that's in Scotland, for a conference. In Edinburgh, actually, there was one thing that's famous is this scarf, like wool scarf. It was famous for that. But then interestingly, so you go to a different store, the identical things, they're going to say for different price. Right. So I went for the first shop, they offer £50 for 3. I bought these and then went to another store and I realized they have a cheaper price, the identical. And then so I was naturally just go to the first store, want to get a return, like a refund, so I can buy a cheaper one. And then you know what happens? So they refuse to return. Okay, now this kind of against our intuition. So isn't that what we just discussed in the class? So the market is competitive, right? And then they should offer the same price. If it's not offering the same price, they should lose the customer. But why is that? What's behind the story I just told? How to make sense of the story, or how you reconcile the story to what we just discussed in terms of demand and supply and equilibrium. What do you guys think? Do you have similar experience when you travel? Yes, right? What prevents us reach something? What prevents us reach something like here? Apparently, it's like same product, they have different equilibrium price, kind of. What prevents us to reach this middle point? What do you think?
Would be lack of information.
Lack of information, certainly, yes. That's one of the key things, yes.
The competitiveness.
The competitiveness, yes, they're getting there. Right. So both point to the right direction. Just imagine you're a tourist. Like when I was in Edinburgh, actually, so that trip was a little disaster. So in the sense, first on my way to there, I stopped in Chicago for one night. And then so when I'm coming back, so I stopped in Chicago again. So it's very, very rare. Okay, so I always got bad luck when I travel. And then I only have 3 nights or the 3 days in Edinburgh. Now, so you mentioned information. That's right, because you don't know where to shop. And then he mentions there's lack of competitiveness. That's true. But largely coming from there's a constraint on the demand side. Like I say, I only have 3 days. Right. So yes, I can try to go there to bargain. But then if they say no, I left with no option. Because yes, I can go to somewhere to report, right? Or to argue or to get my money, but I only have 3 days. So the opportunity cost for me to spend an hour or even 2 hours to get this price match is just too much. But if we live in Omaha, if we go to like buy shopping in old market, right? So the opportunity cost for you to price match is very small. And actually the store owner, they knew, so you are going to do this price match. But they knew you're not going to do this price match when you're on a trip to a foreign country. So in that sense, it's not competitive. So that in sense is not, we are lack of information. Okay. So to summarize, this is not in a perfect competition, but certainly there's competition. So that's why, so stores, so they're going to kind of they have trying to push down the price. Otherwise, you're going to see some price much higher than this one. All right. Okay, so now we are going to use, oh, by the way, so this is something we already studied, right? So we just see, so what happens if the price is too high? And then, so what happens if the price is too low? Certainly, if the price too high, we are going to see a surplus. So the quantity supplied is going to exceed the quantity demand, right? So on the other hand, if the price is too low, and then you're going to see something opposite happen, right? So in the sense, the quantity demanded is going to exceed the quantity demanded is going to exceed the quantity supplied, right? And then so you have a shortage. But then so if there's a shortage, what happens? The price will go up. Actually, there's an incentive from both demand side and the supply side. Both sides is an incentive to let the price to go higher, right? Okay. So now we are going to first look at this practice question, and then so I'm going to explain to you what happens if there's something change the supply and demand, how the market is going to respond. Let's first look at this practice question. So at the price of $5, quantity supplied it. Here the price is 5. Okay, we can draw a line. And the quantity supplied it, so it shouldn't take us much effort to find out supplied it is 13. And then the quantity demanded is going to be 6. And then so here, so there's a surplus, right? So quantity supplied it exceed quantity demanded. So hence answer is C, right? Now let's see what happened when there's a factor cause either the demand or the supply to shift. Let's start with something called the demand to shift. But clearly, so you need to remind yourself what can cause the demand to shift. Now, what factor can cause the demand curve to shift? We talk about several things. Price of related goods, not the price of the good itself, right? Okay, I leave that for you, okay, because we are going to have some example, yes. Tests, yes, or the numbers of buyers, yeah. Changes in income, excellent. And furthermore, so maybe your expectation about future price, right? All those are going to cause the demand to shift. Now, let's say, for example, if there's some factor cause the demand shift to right, meaning there's an increase. But then, so for example, so if there's income increase, right? And then the demand is going to shift to the right, there's increase. Now, let's see what happens. Immediately, you're going to see, because the price is here originally, right? Now, with the new demand curve, immediately, what are we going to see? So this is going to be the quantity demanded, right? But the quantity supplied when there's a sudden change stays here. So let's use a triangle. This is quantity supplied. Let's use a circle. This is the quantity demanded. Now, immediately what happened? When there's a sudden change in demand, what do we call this? This is a shortage. Now, if there's a shortage, what would happen to the price, or how the price is going to adjust? Will go up, right? Both the demand and the supply side has the incentive to let the price to inflate or to go up, right? If that's the case, how would that affect supply? There's no factor to change the supply curve, but because price will rise, then you're going to see, this is what you're going to see. We are going to see some movement along this line, right? Because price will rise. Hence, we are going to move from E1 to E2. This is what is going to happen. Okay, so this is after a positive demand shock. Okay, Now let's go to the other side of third. If there's something called a supply to change, like in this case, say for example, there's a decrease in supply. What can cause a decrease in supply? Right, so increase in cost of production, right? Or maybe there's a change in the price of related goods, right? Or maybe there's a change in the expectation of price. Okay, so these leads to a change in supply. Now, if there's a decrease in supply, immediately what we are going to see. So again, so like we did before, so this is, I mean, the same strategy, right? So this is a new quantity supplied, but at the price P or right after change in supply, the demand has not, you don't have time to adjust yet. This is before the equilibrium, before the market response. So the quantity demand is going to be in this triangle, but this is quantity supplied. Okay, similar like before. Now what are we going to see? There's shortage. With this shortage, again, price is going to what? Price is going to rise, right? If price rise, that's going to lead demand to respond. But because there's no other factor cause the demand curve to shift, you only observe the demand in terms of the quantity demand. You're going to move along the curve. Hence, you're going to move from E1 to E2. Okay, so this is after a negative supply shock. Now let's look at this practice question. This question asks you if the garden gnomes regain popularity, what will happen? There are two steps. Step number one, you need to identify this is going to affect supply or demand. And step number two, which direction? Yes. I'm sorry? Yeah. Right, so it's going to affect the demand, right? Because people change their taste or preference. Just in my spring is coming, and then people want to decorate their garden, right? So the demand starts to increase, and that's going to lead to the change in quantity of demand, right? Very good, thank you. So now let's look at another practice question, and then so in the next step, I'm going to summarize all possible change to the market and see how the market is going to respond. In this question, it asks you if the cost of wood falls, what will happen to the equilibrium price and the quantity in the violin market? Yes. Right. So first, which side is going to affect it? Supply or demand? Supply. Supply is going to increase because it's cheaper to make. Right, so here's we just think about all kinds of wood, certainly include the wood, the special wood for violin, right? Okay, so now it's a good time to summarize. Let's just use this white space. Let's use here. Let me just summarize all possible shocks, right? So you can think about there's a demand. You can also think about it could be the supply. For demand, you can have positive, negative. Right? Similarly, for supply, you have positive, you have negative. Okay, so and then so this is going to have adjustment on price and a quantity. Now I'm going to find out, we are going to find out how these affect the price and the quantity under each scenario. Let's start with demand, positive demand. So maybe we can go to the previous one. So this is a positive demand, right? And the price and the quantity both rise. Okay. So now just put it here. So the price, this is going to rise. This is going to rise. On the other hand, if there's a negative demand, then the price and the quantity is going to fall. And similarly, we can do the same thing. If there's a positive supply shock, how would that affect price and quantity? So this is the example we just look at, right? So the price is going to fall, quantity is going to rise. Finally, if there's a negative supply shock, price is going to rise, quantity is going to fall. Now, if we look at this table, what we learn, what statement we can say? What conclusion we can make? The hint for you is, so can you spot the major difference between the supply shock and the demand shock? Yes. Right. I probably just phrase slightly different. It's basically the same sense. If it is a demand shock, price and the quantity is going to move in the same direction. If it's a supply shock, they're going to move in the opposite direction. This actually helps us to identify what caused the equilibrium adjust. So, for example, if there's something that happens and then you observe price and quantity move in the same direction, and then usually we say this is caused by a demand shock. On the opposite, if you observe the price and the quantity move in the opposite direction, and then usually we say this is caused by a supply shock. This is very important, particularly for our later macroeconomic analysis. When we observe, because in our economy, as I show you in the introduction, so you typically we observe some fluctuation in price, fluctuation in total GDP, right? And then, so this table is going to help us identify what caused the fluctuation. Is because some trouble coming from demand side or some trouble coming from supply side. And it matters a lot in the sense it's going to tell us what kind of response we should have. If it's a demand problem, and then the solution is going to be very different from if this is a supply solution. Right. So in the future, we will come back this table again. Okay. Now let's look at, this is summarized, right? So look at outcome. If the price and quantity move together, it was demand shock. If they move in opposite direction, it's a supply shock. Right. Very good. So now we are going to look at something a little bit complex. Okay. So we are going to look at something happen in the same time. If there's a simultaneous shift of supply and demand, what would happen? Now start with a case. If there's an increase in demand right here, if there's an increase in demand, at the same time, there's a decrease in supply. We want to see how this affects price and quantity. Right? So now we might want to go back to the previous slides or the things we just draw. Okay. If it's positive demand, it is this row. Negative supply is this row. All right. So now we look at these two rows. Okay, the first row and the fourth row. What conclusion you can make after a positive demand shock plus a negative supply shock? How would that affect price and quantity? What statement you can make?
Price will go up and quantity will go up.
Price will go up, that's for sure. Why? Because both move is going to indicate the price is going to rise. But in terms of quantity, are you sure? So the quantities go down. Look at it here. Positive demand shock leads quantity to rise, but negative supply shock leads quantity to fall. Almost as it's ambiguous. At the moment, we cannot tell. But at the end, it's going to depend on which effect is stronger. Right? Now let's go to the slides. Okay. By the way, maybe just write down here. So the impact on quantity is not clear, right? If it's a positive demand shock, it's going to increase quantity. If it's a negative supply shock, it's going to decrease, depending on which one's stronger. Now, in this figure, in this case, which one do you think dominates? in this figure. Demand dominance, right? And then with no surprise, you can see the quantity rise. We move from E1 to E2. Okay, now we can see something opposite happen. It could be the case the negative supply shock is too strong, dominates the positive demand shock. Hence, the quantity will fall. Right, to summarize, so there are two work together. Okay, and you need to see so which one dominates. Right. Let's look at this practice. Consumers in Mayville consider house and apartment to be substitutes. There is an increase in the price of houses in Mayville. At the same time, there are 3 new apartment buildings open there. It asks you what happened to the market for apartment. So we need to identify which side is affected in the market for apartment. Right? But there are 2 things happen, right? One thing is the price of house rise. Second thing, there are 3 new apartment open. And this first one, the first one is going to have impact on what? Demand for apartment is going to increase. And this is going to have impact on supply. Supply is going to increase, right? Now, if the demand increase, price is going to increase, right? Quantities also is going to increase, right? If it's supply and then price is going to decrease and the quantity is going to increase. At the end, what we can say? The only thing we can say for sure is quantity is going to rise. Okay, so the answer is C. Now, to summarize, okay, so I'm going to summarize with this particular case. Usually, or so far, what we have studied is competitive market. A competitive market in the sense there are so many buyers, so many sellers. None of them can influence the price. But in reality, things may be different. First, like the picture show you, right? So that market is not competitive. But there are many other examples we experience every day, right? So in terms of internet provider, in terms of cell phone, and maybe in terms of video game provider, right? So they are not competitive. And then how the market is going to behave from the supply side and demand side, how the price is going to adjust, how the quantity is going to adjust in those markets. In general, it's going to be different, right? But this is not be the focus of this class. So we will focus on competitive market for most of the time, right? And if you're interested in how the market behaves, if it's not competitive, it's a monopoly, right? So this you will be covered in some more advanced class, like intermediate micro. I leave that for your future class. For now, so we focus on competitive